Welcome everybody again to another PPE for the Mind session where we talk about how we can better build up and get a more robust mental health, just especially in these really, really trying times. Today, obviously, my name's Gemma. You've probably met me loads of times, and I've took part in the initial podcasts, which are available, obviously, at the moment online. Just go and have a look on Google, search PPE for the Mind. You can see the podcast in there. Today, I am joined by Kayla from Ontario, Canada. She's a registered psychotherapist with the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario. She specialises in addiction treatment and is currently works as at an inpatient addiction treatment facility. Kayla is also an MSer who is passionate about sharing her story with others living with MS. You may have seen Kayla about Shift.ms because she's also one of our Shift.ms ambassadors. Hello, Kayla, and welcome.
Hello, Gemma. Thank you very much for having me. It is great to be here.
Thank you so much for being here as well, because I know that we're going to try and bust through quite a lot of stuff this evening. So everybody sort of hang on to your hats. We're going to try and go through the entire world and talk therapy, which is actually one of my favourite subjects, sadly enough.
Me too. I'm with you.
Isn't it just like, it's one of those things that, you know, if you have therapy, if you're on therapy, if you think about getting therapy, it's a really good, juicy subject to talk about for a very long time.
Yes, it is. There's so much to talk about. And I feel like once you've had therapy, you just want to talk about it. It's so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And also therapy gives you as well, especially like talking therapies. I tend to find as well gives you an open space to talk. So it's like it's one place that you're you're not judged at all. You can just talk at someone and they're there to kind of take it and then sort it out and then give it back to you in a way that you understand. And you're like, oh, love it. Just love it.
Right. I like that description. That's such a good one. I might steal that from you.
Oh, by all means, feel free. Yeah, I'm going to try and not talk as much this time though. Right, so let's get started. So first of all, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about obviously therapy, what we've had, what benefits it can bring, just generally just a long chat about therapy.
Sounds good. Well, I'm really excited to participate in this conversation for a few reasons. First of all, before I get into that, I just want to put out a disclaimer that although I am here and I am a therapist, I'm not providing therapy in this session. So if at any point in time you think to yourself, wow, I could really benefit from some therapy, keep in mind that this is not a substitute for talking to a therapist in your area. And I would really encourage you to get in touch with someone in your community and get that support for yourself. So I'm excited to participate in this session because on top of being a therapist, I have been to therapy many times throughout my life, and it has just really benefited me. And it's really helped with my processing of my MS diagnosis. That's not the only reason I've gone to therapy, but it's one of the reasons. So I'm excited to talk about this kind of from all angles. So from the perspective of being the therapist and from being the patient or the client in the therapy.
Therapy? No, that's not the right word. Yeah. A therapist and therapy? No, it's not a thing.
I like it though.
Yeah. Oh man. Brilliant. Okay then. What sort of people as well? What kind of people would you say that you've come into just before we get started? Obviously you have MS. I have MS. We all have MS. But we also have been to therapy. But as a therapist, do you ever see people who might present with MS or something similar? Are there similarities between, like, do you know what I mean? Do you see yourself almost sometimes in the people that you see and see similarities in between them?
Absolutely. Even before I was diagnosed with MS, I actually had clients who had an MS diagnosis, and I supported them through that process and what that looked like. And it taught me a lot for when I was diagnosed. I was able to kind of look back and reflect on how they coped. And so even though I was supporting them, I learned from them, if that makes any sense. So I've supported people who have MS. I've definitely supported people with other chronic illnesses, specializing in addiction. I think people with chronic illness often look at that and might be more susceptible to struggling with overuse of substances. So I've seen it quite frequently. I've also supported people before who have been family members of those who have MS and just said, I'm at a loss and I don't know what to do. So I've seen it from a lot of different kind of perspectives. It's interesting. I'm very, very vocal about my MS diagnosis, but my workplace with my patients or my clients is the one place I don't talk about it. So they're the only people in my life who don't really know I have MS. Meanwhile, it influences the way I support them in so many ways.
Cool. That's amazing. I never really thought about it like that. Yeah. I guess if you may have MS, but you don't live MS almost, so that when you're going to work, sometimes it's just not appropriate to bring it up and share and things like that there. And then, yeah, exactly. But it's still actually speaking to how you then act and live as a therapist. That's really interesting. Right. Awesome. Right. So we are obviously here for all these, for everybody here. Oh, hang on. We've already got a question.
I just saw Sasha's question.
I was going to say, if you want to ask questions, by all means, do put them into the chat. If I don't manage to catch them, then please repost them again later on, and just copy and repost them again later on. And I will catch them as they're sort of going up. Mm-hmm. So over to you, Kayla. How do you manage question from Sasha? How do you manage the demands of being a therapist, sort of cognitive, emotional, and energy side of things, alongside your MS?
That's a great question. And it was a big learning curve for me. A lot of it is asking for help. And a lot of the things I teach my patients in terms of self-care were things that I had to be really intentional about applying to myself. So when I'm at work, I am on and I am there and I am present. But when I get home, I need to spend a lot of time relaxing. So I make sure I eat properly. I get the sleep I need to get. I do some things for fun. And as much as my patients or clients don't know that I struggle with MS, my colleagues and my boss does. So I do speak to my boss and I'll sometimes say, hey, you know what, this is too much for me today. I'm really struggling with some symptoms and I need a little bit of extra help. And my workplace has been really good about supporting me and giving me that extra help when I need it. But it is a balancing act and making sure that I spend my personal time just nourishing myself and taking care of myself.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think that's that, I think that is something that I think everyone should do, even if you have MS or not, sort of thing. Just take some time out, look after yourself, and understand that your job is really hard. It's just much harder with MS, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I don't mind telling that to people.
And I feel like MS just forced me to actually take care of myself in a lot of ways. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll know, but
it's that fun thing, isn't it, about practice what you preach? Because the amount of times that before my MS diagnosis, I preached and never practiced. And now I'm all practice, because MS sort of made me go, you know what, actually, you can't do everything. You are not Superwoman. You will not be able to do this. And if you try, I'm going to floor you. And then you go, oh, all right, fine. I'll also eat healthily and get lots of sleep then. Fine, whatever.
Right. And if you're anything like me, you tried to push it a couple times, because that's what I did.
Oh, yeah.
My MS was like, no, you can't do that.
No, don't fight me on this. I will win. That's what my MS says to me. Don't fight me on this. I will win. And it does, and I'm like, okay, fine.
Every time.
Right. So basically, what we're going to hear for everybody is what we're going to try and do is just talk you through the different types of therapy is there, how to know when to get therapy, what areas of therapy there is that's going to help and how they kind of help you, and just how to basically support your mental resilience just in general. So let's start off with the big question, which is when do you seek support? When do you know that you're because I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, especially like if you've got that negative voice in your head that says to you, do you know what, you're just failing. You're just failing, so you don't need support. What you need is to pull up your socks and be better and do better and go out. And I think that's quite a lot of things, especially with people MS, because you've got a lot of things to manage in the round of it. It's quite hard to know, actually, I need help. So when, Kayla, do you think is best to start seeking out that support?
That is a great question. I think, first of all, if you're questioning it and if part of your brain is going, I wonder if I could use that support, it's worth getting. It's worth reaching out and getting that kind of support. But there's other things to look for, because sometimes it's not that obvious. So if you start feeling like you're withdrawing from the people that you care about, if you're not spending as much time with your friends, or maybe you're just kind of ignoring your phone calls, or who uses a phone anymore, text messages, those sorts of things. If you're not responding to people and you're you're isolating and disengaging, that's a good sign that it might be time to reach out for some support. If you feel like no one can relate to you, if you feel like you're the only one who's going through what you're going through, and you know firsthand, MS can be very isolating. So if you start to feel isolated in that sense, and you feel like no one will be able to understand what's happening, it might be time to talk to a therapist. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're just feeling too many things at a time, if you're tired more often.
I'm just laughing because I'm constantly feeling overwhelmed. And
oh, right.
You know, like you just said that, I'm literally like, oh yeah, that is one of the reasons when I need to seek out support.
Yeah.
Practice and preach, practice and preach.
And I have to say the same thing to myself. So Gemma, maybe it's time for you and I to get some more support again. And I know that fatigue can be a symptom of MS, but if it's not related to your MS and you're feeling excessively tired, that can also be a sign that something's going on with your emotions and it's worth talking about. If you get irritated, but in a way that doesn't line up with the situation, so disproportionately irritable, that's another time when it's like, okay, things are affecting me a little bit more. And I get like that sometimes. And people get on my nerves. And I look back later and I think to myself, well, that didn't even make sense, right? But if that's happening often, a really big one is losing interest in the things that you used to enjoy doing.
Yeah.
I can definitely identify with that. There have been times for me, especially shortly after my diagnosis, where it's like, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I just want to sit here and stare at a wall, right? Meanwhile, there's lots of hobbies and interests that I love. I love to make things. I love to, I sew and I do crafting and I like to bake and all that kind of stuff. But when I was really overwhelmed finding out about my MS diagnosis, I didn't want to do any of that. It was a sign for me to get some support. I've got a whole list of them. So Gemma, stop me at any time if you want to.
No, we'll chat afterwards. But let's keep going through the list. I want to see if anyone out there, especially if you just, just write yes or no, I think, in the chat if you can, just if you're recognizing any of these are bringing up just a thought, a little flag in your head that goes, oh, I've had that, even if it's not right now, just at some point. Shout a big yes, and in fact put a yes into the chat, because I think it's really useful as well for other people to see the yeses as well, so that they know that it's not just them. This is a very much a universal thing that everybody feels, that some of these will flag something in your head that goes, you know what, yeah, actually, definitely. Thank you very much. Oh my God, thank you very much, guys.
So many people already chiming in, and I don't think everyone gets to see all of these. I think some people are just sending them to the panelists, but it's great to see so many people relating and talking. I think openness is a really important thing here. So thank you for the folks who are saying that you can identify. One that is really worrisome and a definite sign to seek help is if you feel a sense of hopelessness, if you can't see things getting any better than they currently are and you're struggling, that's definitely a time to talk to someone and reach out, and sooner rather than later. An increase in substance use. So if maybe in the past you've had the odd drink here and there, and now you're finding you're drinking more and more often, or you're using any substance more and more often, maybe you're hiding from people how much you're using and that sort of thing, right? That can be a sign that it's a time to get support. And as the addiction counselor, of course, I'm going to talk about substances in here somewhere.
Of course.
It wouldn't be me if I didn't. If you're avoiding life in general, so you are oversleeping, right? Or using other avoidance strategies. So substance use is one avoidance strategy. So is oversleeping. Sometimes it is just spending too much time glued to your phone, that sort of thing, but anything that keeps you from life, right? And honestly, when you're diagnosed, I would encourage everyone to at some point get some kind of help and support there, just help you accept it. But if you find that you're not accepting your diagnosis, or there's part of you still thinking maybe this will go away, then it's time to get some help.
Exactly. And just to go back a couple of those as well, just some thoughts I had as I was saying them. One of the things that I've noticed as well to my women, ladies out there, that a lot of these, there's something about as well, the fact that a lot of these can be quite hormonal, and we can almost do a lot to just sort of wipe it off and say, oh, it's just my hormones. It's happening right now because it's my hormones. My hormones have changed. So you get more irritable. Although I've seen quite funnily, that's what I was kind of trying not to laugh about or smile about, but I couldn't help giggling that quite a few of the people that are talking in the chat are men that are talking about shortness and irritability. But you know, it's something that a lot of people then immediately get associated, especially women, get associated with hormone changes. Things like fatigue, things like, you know, feeling irritable, disproportionately irritable, feeling tired, is things that you will generally get probably monthly. But if it goes on for that month, if it's not at a certain time of the month, it's still a reason to reach out. To be honest, if it's happening monthly anyway, it's a reason to reach out, quite frankly. I also have I get PMDD. I was like PMS on steroids.
Yeah.
It's PMS, but just huge. And that was one of the things I had to reach out about, because I realized that, you know, my mood swings were so caught up in my hormones that I was like generally like depressed or anxious. And then my period would be due, and that would just tank to a whole new level. And actually getting diagnosed with that and getting sorted out with that helped me sort out all the other things of seeking therapy. Even the therapist was like, let me show you how to cope with this, but while we're there, let's also talk about this. So don't discount it, ladies, especially that it's something to do with just your hormones. I think it's quite easy to do. Yeah, it's not at all. And the second thing I was thinking about as well was the substance abuse one. I think we've all done that. I was talking to a therapist about it once, and she was like, oh, like, don't worry about it just yet, because you're not doing it to like a massive excess where it's affecting your life. Right. What you're doing is you're having a bad week and then drinking a lot of the weekend. You and about 80% of the other people in the world, sort of thing. And it was like,
especially during COVID.
Yes, exactly. And speaking of COVID, for example, is a perfect example. At the beginning of COVID, when lockdown started, everyone's drinking, I think, who does drink, went up. There was a peak. And then as we got used to lockdown, it went back down again. And it's gone back down to like normal, almost your normal levels for sort of a lot of people. So a lot of people it hasn't, but for those people it has, that's because you were using the alcohol at the time as a coping mechanism for something that's really stressful. What you then have to worry about is if you don't stop using it as a coping mechanism. And that's what that was really nice to hear that from a doctor, to sort of say, you know what, you're in a very, 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 very bad place. It's okay to try and use these bad coping mechanisms. They're not going to be healthy for you, but get help at the same time. Get help at the same time so you don't become reliant on them. And I was a bit like, I love that. I've got, can I read that out loud? I'm going to just read it out loud. That Adil says a split or two does no harm. I'm still not full time.
If you can use in moderation, that's a very different story, I think. And I think that we all cope with things that are maybe not the best coping mechanisms, but is it starting to create problems in my life or not? Or can I stop or not? And that's where it can become something to look at a little bit more. But to give yourself that grace to be able to say, hey, I maybe coped in a way that was not the best way to cope, but I'm still here, right? And I'm still fighting.
Exactly. And that's an interesting thing about just cutting yourself a bit of slack. That's not.
There was a question about what's in my mug. It's water. It really is.
Sure? You sure? I love it. I'm asking a therapist about that. Right. Just next, we want to just add a little poll on there if we can do. Just checking that Shift are ready for that. JJ. We're going to add a poll on there. We're going to ask people just to answer the poll. I'm going to ask you two questions. Basically, one is around whether or not you have access therapy. So if you can just answer on this on your screens right now. I feel like I'm on a talk show.
The answer's so fancy with the poll. I've never seen this before.
Hit the red button.
I love this.
The second question is around, do you think that was brought about by the changes in your MS, brought about by your MS, it could be your diagnosis, how you're living with it, how you're coping with it, anything like that? Do you think, because it's quite an interesting question, isn't it, that life can bring a lot of challenges in general, but I do think sometimes that MS in particular can be really, 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 and it's such a massive change. I saw that someone was talking earlier on about having primary progressive MS. Like that's really, really, really got to be it's a massive, massive life change, if you know what I mean. So these have got to be surely the triggers for people to get into access to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering about just on people on here, if many of you have not accessed therapy and haven't found that your MS has particularly needed it until now, maybe with the addition of lockdown and things like that. So if you can do, just enter into the poll for me. When you're done, click on the little X in the corner, it'll go away, and then we'll have a look at those numbers at the end just to see how people voted. Again, it's all completely confidential. We can't see anyone's details. We're just going to tot up the numbers just at the end.
Yeah.
Just to go back as well, someone was
I wanted to go back to that. Sorry, go ahead, Gemma.
No, it's all right. I'm just trying to.
I think you might be trying to find the same question I am.
Oh, you were saying, yes. Okay, so Kit was saying that PPMS is such a terrible diagnosis. His son has it. His or her, I think son has it, and is doing all of that and more and not seeking help. And then again, quite a few people saying that basically they understand that as well. Which leads us kind of on to the next part, I think. I think let's talk about support that could be available. So what the help is that's out there that's available, and then maybe we'll come back around to helping others to get help. Maybe at the end.
I think that's worth coming back to.
Yeah. Okay then. I'm looking at you like, is that okay? Is that okay?
I think that's great. Yeah. That's really important because I know even some of my family members are here and they have been a great support to me. So I know that there's people here who have MS and people here who are supporting those of us who do have MS, and we'll have a lot of questions about, I see the need for support in my loved one, but how do I get them that help? So let's come back to it.
Brilliant. Okay, so next up we're going to start talking about, guys, about the different types of support that's out there. I think some people think when they think of therapy, they immediately think of sitting down in front of somebody and having that talking therapy that you kind of see quite a lot on TV shows and programs, things like that. But actually therapy is all encompassing. There's a lot of different ways that you can find therapy, and we're going to go through as many of them as possible now. And we're also probably going to shout up at which ones we've had, because we can.
Yes, exactly. So even before getting formal therapy, there's a lot of support that can be gained. We have a lot of support networks in our lives. Sorry, I can't talk today. But we have a lot of different support networks, and some of that just comes from family and friends, and recognizing that the people around you who care about you and love you can be a great sense of support. And when I was very first diagnosed, like in those first couple of hours, that was what I went to. And it made all the difference for me. So I think the hard thing though is I know what I need, you know what you need, I don't know what you need, and you don't know what I need.
Yeah.
So it's learning to communicate to the people around you who care and who want to help and genuinely want to be there as a support, and telling them, right now, I just need you to listen and not try and come up with a solution for me. Or isn't that a big one?
It absolutely is. I'm just thinking back as well. I remember when I first got diagnosed, and it's funny you should say that, because I had the exact issue of, I knew exactly what I needed, and what I needed was not to talk about it. So I remember texting the boyfriend at the time and being like, so I'm in hospital, I've been diagnosed with MS, tell me a joke. I need to laugh. And he was just like, do you want to talk? And I was like, no. And he told me some jokes, and he had literally come out with some of the worst jokes I've ever known. We've got really dark senses of humours, and I was remember like, that's what I needed, and I was very much like, that is all I need. Don't ask me about it. I don't know. I've just been told I'm in a hospital bed. Zip it. Tell me a joke. And that was really powerful. I can't believe I've forgotten about that. Actually, probably one of the few things about that boyfriend that was really good about him is that he could come up with jokes really, really quickly.
So it sounds like he's not a present boyfriend.
No. He's a terrible human being. No.
And hopefully
good jokes.
The jokes were good. There we go. Finding the positive.
Yeah, exactly.
I can relate to that so much. I remember when I was first diagnosed, I went and I told my friend, a good friend of mine, Jessica, and I said, Jessica, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I don't really know what this means. And I was on the verge of tears, and she just looked at me and she goes, you would, with kind of this smirk on her face. And I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, you are so extra. You would have multiple sclerosis. You can't have just one. And it was a terrible joke and so inappropriate, but I laughed so hard.
That is kind of the support of friends that they can give you, that
Right.
you don't even realize that they can give you. It's not sitting down, it's not even the heavy stuff. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's just coming over and just having a laugh and sort of thing, and just taking you out of yourself for a little while. I think my friends also brought me like DVDs and chocolate and things like that, and they were just like,
Yes.
you can't leave the house, you've had a massive relapse, you can only see out of one eye, but here's some DVDs and chocolate. And I was like, wicked, thanks guys, like
Beautiful.
awesome. And as that time's gone on, I think people will find that as well. I think your family and your friends, I think it's a massive barrier. It's very hard to ask for help. It's very hard to say I'm struggling, especially to your family and friends. They may be the ones that you find it most difficult with, but at the same time, they can be the biggest resource that you have to hand to be able to help. So I don't have the answers of how to do that, but I do know that it can be brilliant when you do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And sometimes I had to tell my family members and my friends, I had to say, listen, I can't support you through my diagnosis right now. You need to find someone else. But I need your support. And it was good. And they were willing to do that, but I had to tell them. Right.
Oh yeah, you absolutely had to tell them. Yeah. I remember my parents all the time to stop looking at me, because they kept looking at me like, what's going to happen to my bit? And I was like, the weight of your looks and stares, go and do it in another room.
Right.
But take that elsewhere. I can't support you through your trauma right now. I'm going through mine. So
exactly. And I like that you associate it with, you don't like it, but I think it's important that you associate the diagnosis as a trauma, because I think it can be something very traumatic to go through, to be diagnosed, and for family members, because life shifts, life changes. I want to comment on what Rosie said for a minute here about being too scared to go to therapy. That is very, very normal and common. I think everyone, or just about everyone I've ever worked with, has expressed some level of fear about going to therapy and what will it be like? Does it mean I'm quote unquote crazy, right? What does it mean? In my perspective and opinion, everyone needs therapy at some point in their lives, because it's just an awesome practice and a really cool thing to benefit from. But it's okay to be afraid. I was afraid. I was especially afraid as a therapist going to therapy, because I thought to myself, shouldn't I know this already? Shouldn't I know better? But it doesn't work that way. And I think it's actually helped me to become a better therapist that I do go to therapy sometimes. So I think breaking down that stigma is really important.
Absolutely. The second half of that question slightly as well, I think, is a little bit about coming out as well, like she said at the end of it, like we were saying about your friends and your family being your first sort of, if you think of it as lines of support, and your first line of support is always going to be your friends and family, the people immediately around you and know you the best. That's your first line. So let's go on slightly until the second line. Who next? You've exhausted friends and family. I'm joking, you will never exhaust them, but you think you need more. They're not giving you what it is that you're needing, or you're feeling like you need something more. What's your next line then, Kayla?
Yeah, because oftentimes friends and family are awesome, but if they don't have MS themselves, or they don't know much about it, there's going to be limits of what they can do. So the next level of support would be peer support. And that's other peers who have MS and understand MS. So there's different types of peer support networks. And of course, my favorite is Shift, an online network, and it's global, which I love because I get to meet so many people from so many wonderful places like Gemma. And on top of that, a lot of times in our communities, there's in-person peer support networks, right? So I know when I was first diagnosed, I found out through my local MS society that there was an MS support group. And so I went to it and I was able to talk to other people. And my first time going there, I just sat there and cried. And I don't even think I said anything. Like I maybe said 2 words. But just being around other people who understood was really helpful. There were limits to how helpful that was to me, just because I was so young and a lot of the people at that group were much older than me. So there were limits to how helpful it was, which is where Shift came in for me. And I found a lot more people who were at my stage of life, which was really helpful as well, and whose MS maybe wasn't as progressed. But you can find a wide variety and range of people who have MS. So I think, Gemma, I'm curious, what's your experience been like with peer support networks?
Probably exactly the same. I think I joined Shift when I sort of needed them and I needed to find younger people. I think there was an issue slightly sometimes around, and I think it's getting better, because I think that with drug therapies and things like that, the field and the way that MS, especially if you're relapsing remitting, affects you, means that everyone's on a kind of a bit of a more of a level playing field. Like, for example, one of my really good friends who lives across the road, who is maybe 50, she got diagnosed with MS probably about 3 years older than I was when she got diagnosed, and is in a very different state to what I'm like now. Very different. Both relapsing remitting, but very, very different. And I think that's partly down to the fact that drug therapy, she literally said to me, there were no drugs in my day. Now there were a few, and they didn't work for her and things like that. And I think that shows very much in those community settings sometimes, where you say, like you say, you can go and you feel like there's a very much an older clientele that's there. You can go there and feel like you don't have anything in common with people, not just because of the age gap, but because of the ability gap and the way that you view life and the way you're going to view life with MS and things like that going forward. So it's really interesting then that you can find your niche. You can, and quite frankly, actually, guys, if you're out there right now and you're listening, definitely, if you don't find your niche, make your niche. Start your own group, send a message out onto different boards, things like that, and say, I'm looking for people with MS who have these sort of things, these sort of interests. I have one that's like a group that's like a stitch and bitch. We have a little, we make
That's awesome.
things. Yeah, we knit, and we do that. Now do my video, because I couldn't find anyone that was like crafty who also had MS. I've seen people that have done it just based on sports. Whatever it is, whatever your niche is, if you need to find your people, definitely put a shout out, say on the Shift.ms web, on the Shift.ms pages or anything like that. You will find your people, because that is, like you say, that's your next level of support. It's definitely that peer support, finding people in the same situation that you are, the similar backgrounds, similar places. I'm also involved a lot of people with like Black people with MS, because obviously it's a different way of being in the world and a different experience.
Yeah.
Find your people. They are definitely out there. Especially I think, especially for people that are not relapsing remitting, people that are primary progressive and things like that as well. I think that that cohort could be smaller, and sometimes that voice isn't as loud. So find your people that have also got it as well, and bring them in closer. I think it definitely can help.
I love that. Find your people, and because I'm rambling, 1 second. Let me gather myself. So within this network of people who have MS, we're all still unique individuals, right? And we all still have our own interests and things like that, and our lives look very different. And so I love that, finding your group of people, the people who relate to you and live life in a similar way that you do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then on top of that as well, with the peer support online and in person, we obviously have things like you're saying, like you are one of the ambassadors for Shift.ms, and they have things like the buddy system, where it's like a mixture of both online and face to face. You can have meetings, you can find one person, and it doesn't have to be a whole group of people. It can be just one person that you sort of say help, and then they go, I get it, I understand it, absolutely, let's do this sort of thing.
I love that you brought up the buddy network, because that's what really got me involved in Shift. I had a buddy. There was no one in my area at the time, so she lived across the world from me, but it was such an amazing experience, and she really helped me to be able to find my voice with my MS and become confident and comfortable with my diagnosis. So it's an amazing system, that buddy network.
Absolutely. So we're going to go on. Well, I'm going to come back to some of these comments that we're getting through now, because they're really brilliant, but we are going to come on to
some really good ones.
So I know that someone was saying that that what happens with the people that can't find their people and want to isolate things like that, but we will come back to that in a second. We're going to go into the different levels first though. So what's the next level?
The next level would be seeing a professional. So someone like myself, a therapist, a counselor, a social worker, whatever, depending on where you're from and what terms are used, but seeing someone who has that designation behind their name to talk to a little bit more about it and process through what's going on. So sometimes that's one-to-one, and it's sitting down in an office with one person, or right now, because of COVID, a lot of therapy has moved to being online. So that makes it really accessible for folks, which I quite like. So there's online options and things like that, but meeting with one person. So just you and the therapist, you talk about what's going on, your fears, your hopes, your dreams, all of it, and kind of work through that way. But sometimes there's also group therapy. So it might be a room full of people who struggle with the same thing, right? So in this case, maybe a room full of people who have chronic illnesses, and then one therapist, and the therapist will guide the conversation and those kinds of things. It really depends on what's accessible to you, what's in your community. I think in my community, one-to-one therapy is basically what we have offered for people with chronic illnesses, but it might be different in different places. So
absolutely. And just on that as well, I know that there's a comment there about things not being available. This is very much NHS, it's very much England focused.
yes.
But one of the things I will suggest, that if anyone is in the UK who finds that they feel like they need to have access to some sort of therapy that is this sort of therapy with professionals, there are places such as IAPT. So if you type into Google IAPT, which is instant access to psychological therapies, you can self-refer to those. So it's not necessarily in the UK, it's not something you need to do, that you have to go through your doctor to do anything like that. You can self-refer to them. And what you do is, when you self-refer to them, what normally they'll let you be able to do and be able to go to, is that what they'll offer is the big, like you were saying, the group therapies. So I've done all of these. Awful,
I love this. Yeah.
So then again, talking about the way of doing that is, so for IAPT, for example, they did one that's on living well with long-term conditions. I did that. That was really amazing, to be in a room full of people with all different type of long-term conditions, not just MS, and literally go through things like, went through the grief process, how to tell your friends and family, how to find out information, what information can do for you, how to find your people in your peer support and things like that. And it was just really useful. Things like 6 weeks, completely free. You can sign up for it. You can self-refer to that sort of thing as well. That is one way that you can get something. It may not be fully funded, proper to face-to-face therapy, but in the UK that is available. Kayla, Canadian, other side of the world. What can you do over there?
Yeah, so over here, it's different depending on which province you live in. Changes very greatly, but I know in my province, Ontario, we have this great resource online, and it's called Connex Ontario, CONNEX. And through that, you can find a list of every mental health and addiction resource that's available. Another thing we have throughout Canada is our Canadian Mental Health Association. And so through that, there's different branches in each local community, and you can reach out to them and they'll let you know what groups and individual counseling they offer that's funded. So
cool. And also Mike, yes, that Mike. Mike, who also who did the therapy sessions as well right at the beginning with me for PPE. He's also said that some local MS societies offer grants for people for one-to-one therapies as well. So I think that's probably universally that's not just UK based, but the MS society as a whole across the different places that they are centered. Obviously they are in Canada and in the US. They're obviously here in the UK. Have a look at that as well. Have a look around for funding as well. If you don't have anything that's through your NHS or through your life insurance and health insurance, things like that, have a look for funding as well for it, because it may well be that you can get funded to help. Just because we're looking at time, we're going to keep going.
Yes.
So that's one-to-one groups and therapies. Okay, what next? What if you can't do those and you're feeling particularly desperate?
Yeah, if you're feeling particularly desperate, or you have that hopeless feeling that things aren't going to get better, if you feel like you're in a crisis, that's where I would encourage you to reach out to your crisis lines or support systems in your community. And those are different in each location. But what I encourage people to do is look up your local crisis line before you or anyone you know needs it. And the hope is you never need it. And that's great. You just looked up a number. It took you 5 minutes. But you have it there in case you or someone that you really love does need it one day. And then if you are in that state of crisis, it will be really tough to try and find that information because your brain is not working at full capacity. You already have that number there. Reach out to a crisis line, tell them what's going on, ask for help. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Think about that.
I was going to ask as well, just for if anybody out there knows of it, thank you very much for Andy, who's already put into there some information on the US mental health access.
Awesome.
If you have any links, anything that you know about, and especially if you know any good crisis numbers or crisis organizations that you can get in touch with for that help, just a phone call away, have a look it up and just stick the number into the chat, just in case somebody in the chat is on this line then gets to see that and thinks, actually, I could really do with that, just because it would be really useful. And by all means as well, I know a lot of people do things like post them onto their like Facebook and things like that, and things. It's just really, really useful to have it there so that, like you say, Kayla, if you're in crisis, it's very difficult to get access to that information because your brain just isn't functioning quite well. This could really help you out, so you never know.
I love what Olivia said, and that's a great point I'd forgotten. Befrienders shows worldwide helplines. So if you go to like Google Befrienders, crisis lines and things like that, and they'll show them all around the world, different ones that are available.
Awesome.
Resources Andy's posting, that's great.
Awesome. Right, okay then. So just to go, should we go back? No, let's go forward. Let's go forward.
And then we'll go back forward.
And then we'll go back. Yeah, we'll go back after we've gone forward. I'm making perfect sense. So then, okay, so the next part then we're going to talk about is, I think about, well, actually it's a little bit going back. We're going to talk about a little bit about breaking the stigma.
Mm-hmm.
But in that, I think as well, let's also talk about in that the question we had earlier on about helping other people to get into therapy if they don't want it, if they are not engaging with it, if they're not engaging with their MS and their diagnosis, you know, what can you do to help someone if you see someone like that? Because I think even people with MS, we're now knowing that most people on this line have MS, you will meet other people who are not engaging with it and they're in that situation. I have come across countless people that are just like, and I kind of want to shake them and go, no, you must accept it now, because if you accept it now, then you get on it and you can get ahead of it maybe a little bit, and you can you know, give yourself more time and look after yourself and blah 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 blah, and it'll improve the quality of your life. And no, Gemma, you can't do that.
No, but it is so tempting, isn't it?
Yes.
I do that all the time. I just want to be like, look, if you address it now and deal with it, life is so much better and there's so much more hope and it's so much more encouraging. But that's not the case. I think a lot of it is respecting where people are at, and recognizing that I can't force someone else to get help. The best thing I can do is let them know what's out there and let them know I'm going to continue to be there to support them. And if they do seek more help, if they do see a therapist, maybe even offering to drive them to the session or show up with them, things like that, to make it a little bit easier and less isolating.
Yeah.
Great thing to do is modeling. So what I mean by that is, if someone in your life who's close to you has been diagnosed with MS, I know someone was mentioning about a son with primary progressive MS, and that's a tough diagnosis to see a child go through. So maybe you getting your own therapy and support, and your son that, hey, it's okay, look, I'm doing this, I'm getting the help that I need, and that can show people that it's safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing as well, is that I kind of think I've had to learn the hard way as a high functioning anxiety person with a lot of control issues. Like, I want other people to get their help now, but as much as I may want it, you cannot, unfortunately, make anyone else to just do it for you, unfortunately. Because and even then, if they were to do it and they were just doing it for you, it can help them, because if they're not doing it for them, it's not going to really hold. It's not going to really help.
Exactly. It doesn't stick. I've worked with a lot of clients before who have come to see me because people have forced them to. They've said, no, look, I think your life is a problem. Your drinking or your drug use is a problem. Go see Kayla, the counselor. And then they come to see me and they go, I don't think it's a problem. And we sit there for a little bit and that's about it. Right. But if people can recognize for themselves, and it's a process and it takes time for different people. So respect their timeline, even though it's usually not my timeline. And I also like to control things. So I want everyone to be on my timeline.
Yes. Now.
Never are.
Plans for next week now.
Exactly.
So what about like breaking down the stigma and normalizing therapy? How can we help do that?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously sessions like this.
Exactly. This is something I'm so passionate about. And this is why I am so open about talking about my own therapy and that I've been to therapy before, and will continue to go to therapy throughout my life.
Yeah.
Because I think the more we talk about it and the more, I kind of put a face to what it looks like to be a client of a therapist, right? Sometimes we have these perceptions in our mind of what it means to go to therapy. And as soon as that's challenged, it can really help to break down that stigma. But so often people have that same feeling that I used to have of, I should know better. I should be able to take care of this myself. And it's just not true. In terms of my repertoire of patients that I've worked with over the years, I've worked with all sorts of people. I've worked with doctors, right? I've worked with other counselors. You name a profession, you name a different life experience, and I've probably worked with an individual who comes from that background and that life experience. And there's nobody that is immune to needing mental health support or therapy. There's no one. So I think just recognizing that you are not alone and you are not broken for needing therapy is really important. There's
Absolutely.
nothing about needing to talk.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely 100%. I don't think there's anyone in this world who doesn't at some point need some sort of intervention, some sort of help, it could be anything. Just one thing I want to slightly backtrack on what I said earlier on as well about not being able to force people into therapy. One thing that I know that you can do, I think, is if you see someone who's really struggling and you see that they're really, 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 really in a bad place, or you feel like you're in a really bad place as well, you can always reach out to someone and say, look, I don't want you to lecture me. I don't need someone to do. I just need you to sit with me. Just sit with me in this while I'm in this. That can help. And then when you're ready, then you can go and seek the therapy. I think sometimes knowing that someone else is there with you when you're at your lowest point, or knowing that you are there for someone else when they're at their lowest point, especially like you're saying about the parents with the people with the son with PPMS. I think sometimes just sitting with them can help. You know what I mean? Be as vocally, not vocally, but noticeably around them as possible until they're ready. You don't have to tell them they have to get help, but you can still be noticeably around them, if you know what I mean. So they can't feel that they're quite so alone.
Yep. Gemma, that actually really sparked something for me, and something I probably should have said earlier. There is a time when it is important to step in and get someone help, even if they don't want it. And that would be if they're thinking or talking about suicide. So if someone's talking about harming themselves or harming someone else, then it is important to step in for them, because they may not be in a place to get that help. So in that case, looking at your local emergency support services and things like that, that is the time when I would say step in and get the help for them, because they might not be able to right now. And it is very important. Can still be a shift there. So I wanted to
backtrack a little bit as well. Same here. And I think as well, quite frankly as well, if at any point you're not sure whereabouts on this spectrum you are or they are, or whether or not you can help, ask someone else. Parents, go and find your own, go and seek your own support and ask that support, and they will be able to tell you whether or not actually you do need to, sit and be quiet and be around them, or you need to push them into some sort of therapy, or actually we're looking at, something that's more forced and more enforced because they need that help in order to safeguard their lives. There's always someone out there that can definitely give you that advice.
Yes.
So can we just, before we move on, I've just noticed as well that some people have put some questions in the question box.
Yes, I saw that.
But we'll come back to those first. Have we got the results to the poll that we did earlier on?
Ooh, I'm excited to see that.
I have no idea how this is going to pop up either. Hey!
There they are.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
So quite a large amount, 40% of people that are on here have not accessed therapy.
Yeah.
Which is a crazy amount. I almost thought that the title of this talk would attract a lot of people that have been in therapy.
I thought so too.
Yeah, I just assumed. I didn't think that number would be anywhere near that high.
Can I say, though, I'm kind of excited that it is, because what that tells me is that people who haven't accessed therapy are thinking about it.
Yes.
And that just gets me really excited, because I think the more people who get to benefit from that process, the better.
That's amazing, isn't it?
If you're here, yay you. Thank you for taking that step.
Exactly. We're not preaching to the choir. We're actually preaching to some people that maybe are thinking about it, and we're hopefully going to help you find ways to go and do that and to take that next step.
Exactly.
And also, the changes about being brought about by your MS, 60%, which is crazy. That should tell you right there, how much everybody kind of could do with therapy and could need and should think about going to therapy. It's not MS dependent, but at the same time, it's just an interesting poll. Thank you very much for everyone that took part in that. That is amazing.
MS can be a good motivator to get therapy, but it's definitely not the only reason. No. I noticed somebody else in the chat mentioned earlier something I could relate to about how they weren't necessarily in therapy for their MS, but it was amazing how much their MS came up as a topic in therapy. And I can relate to that because there have been other times I've gone to therapy for various concerns, and my MS pops up and I'm like, yeah, I didn't think that was related, but maybe it is.
No, so. Same here. In my therapy, I think a lot of the times in my therapy, can't even say this online, but my therapy always comes back to two things: MS or my parents.
See, I can't talk about my parents because I think they're watching this right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But my parents are probably watching this one, and I'll quite happily tell you it comes back to MS or my parents every time. Right. So questions just before, because we've only got like 6 minutes left. So I'll come back.
Let's get some questions.
So Sarah has said, I'm most concerned about what's going to happen to me when I get old, and how will we die? It's an interesting question, because I think that's something that comes up quite a lot with anyone with MS, and it tends to be like a running theme of therapy around MS, is this thing of, okay, now I've got this thing, and it's actually something that Shift.ms have done quite a few videos on recently. So you have a look at the Shift.ms YouTube channel, or the Living Health YouTube channel, that's now switching over. There's quite a few videos on there as well about that, because it seems like an all-encompassing thing to get diagnosed, and you immediately start running to end of life. What's it going to happen? Is it going to come for me? Is that what's going to, is this it? And I think the answer to that is quite universal, isn't it, Kayla, really?
Yeah. I think in general, as humans, we tend to be afraid of death and what that's going to look like. And if that fear is coming up for you, I don't want to provide you therapy around that right now, but I want to encourage you to talk to a therapist about it. But I will quickly mention, when I was first diagnosed, my GP, my general practitioner, she told me, listen, you have MS. And I was just crying and crying. And she told me, she said, this is not going to be the thing that kills you. Right. She said, there's so much hope and there's so many treatments and that sort of thing. And I found a lot of hope in that. So, yeah.
And I think that's the thing as well, is that a lot of the things that happens in, say, like the ACT therapy that we did, that PPE is based upon, and a lot of like CBT and things like that is based upon. There's a large part of that is based around, acceptance. And I think that you can't control everything, but you can kind of get to a point where you almost accept it. Almost. Right. I don't think anyone truly accepts everything, but we can almost get to the point where we accept it. And that would be my answer to that always. I don't know. We don't have the answers. No one has the answers. No one can tell you that. Not a doctor in the world can tell you how that's going to go and what you're going to die of and when it's going to be. Yeah. But therapy can help you to try to accept it.
Yeah.
Katie Murphy has asked, are we aware of any services in the Republic of Ireland? I'm not. I can't, unfortunately, I'm not. Does anyone else who's on the call, are you aware of any services, access to therapies or anything like that that are specific to the Republic of Ireland? If you do, please stick it in the chat. If not, I would also think about putting that up as a question on the Shift.ms website. Go onto the chat. Go and put that on the website on there. I can guarantee you someone will come back to you with an answer or a way to research it and find out the answer to that.
That's a great thing, that when this conversation is over today, the things that we didn't get to, bring them to the Shift website. If you're looking for resources and that sort of thing, there's a lot of people who can help you out there.
Definitely.
I did notice that a lot of people in the chat were asking questions about, do I work full-time, part-time? How do I manage the fatigue and that? So I just want to quickly say, I do work full-time right now, but I recognize that life changes and my MS might adapt. And I'm very open to the possibility that in the future, if things shift, I will go to part-time work. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But right now I'm capable of working full time, and that has been really helpful for me. It just gives me a sense of purpose today, but I think I would still feel a sense of purpose if I was working part-time or had to retire early.
Absolutely. Right. So that's us pretty much coming to the end. Like we've said, just to go on to the, just to say, you know, if you want to continue this conversation, you want to continue the talk, you want to ask some more questions, anything like that, please go over to the Shift.ms website. Put it onto the boards on there. Certainly, I think me and Kayla will drop in throughout the week just to try and answer any questions that you might have got, just to see if we can help. If you want to follow Kayla on any of her social medias, you can find her on Shift.ms as Kayla underscore hope.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat as well.
On Instagram, you can find her personal account on Kayla _hope_, or any MS related or more MS related account. Is that on Instagram as well?
It is.
Is so_extra_ms. So by all means, please, you know, come out, find us, come and have a chat if you do need to. Seek the help that you obviously need if you're finding that you're struggling. I hope this has been as informative as possible. I think we've covered so much in this. Unfortunately, we can't get everything into individuals. We're not here to offer therapy and things like that, but we are here to signpost you to wherever it is that we can send you. So hopefully you can find all that support. And hopefully as well, at some point, when you feel strong and resilient in yourself, you can then go on to help someone else and pass it on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Speak to you soon. Obviously, we've got one more session coming up as well. That will be all around sort of, you know, self-care and what you can do to be able to support yourself and support your mental resilience. That will be coming up in a couple of weeks. I hope to see you there. Have a good evening. Oh, and a good day. Sorry, Kayla. Thank you.
Yes. It's only noon. Well, 1 o'clock here. So
thank you, everyone, and goodbye. See ya.
Bye.